Hey, you're listening to the Words on Flick show with me, Janine Coveney. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Words on Flick show podcast for September 2022. Thank you for joining us. I think we're going to have a great conversation today. I wanted to talk about a very special subject that's near and dear to all of our hearts. And I have some wonderful guests joining me, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a minute. So, the Words on Flicks show, movie talk from a fan perspective. For this edition, I'm talking about how women of a certain age are being portrayed on film. You can call us middle aged, you can call us mature, you can call us over 50 and fabulous. But the idea for this particular discussion stemmed from seeing several movies over the past year or so where older women were protagonists. And then also, I recently established a private Facebook page called WOCA, Women of a Certain Age. And I wanted it to be a place where women of our age, our friends, our colleagues, our coworkers, where we could join together and share our challenges, our triumphs. We could ask for advice or simply vent about the things that we're facing as we age, children, parents, health issues, beauty issues, whatever it is. We could do it in a closed group where, we all support one another. So joining me for this discussion are two dear friends and colleagues, and I'll let them introduce themselves. First is Ms. Leslie Hunter Gadsden. Leslie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi, everybody. I have spent, most of my career writing and or teaching and editing, sort of all together. Initially, I came out of Medill School of Journalism as a reporter, and I worked for trade publications and then freelance for publications I wanted to write for, like Black Enterprise. And after doing that for several years, I kind of came out and had my son, and then 3 years later had my daughter, and then decided that I did a little freelancing while they were small, and then decided to get a master's in education and go into teaching because I figured while they were little, it would be good to be on their schedule. Did that for about 5 years, a little shy of 5 years, 4.5. And here in New York City, in the borough of Queens, although I am a Washington Heights native from Upper Manhattan. And after that, I got to a point where, politics, New York teaching, a principal who was an African American woman, but that was the last thing we had in common. She was pretty hateful. So I ended up, without going into a lot of depth, I decided to leave that position and keep my teaching license active as a substitute teacher and leave her purview so that she could not harm me. So moving on from that, I started to get back into freelance writing again. And I guess really the last 15 years, I have been combining freelance writing and editing for publications more recently, like Next Avenue and Sisters from AARP, and still doing a bit of substitute teaching. At this point, I have done a lot of elementary, but also middle school. And I taught an intro to journalism class to high school students, I guess about 10 years ago. So I haven't done college yet. So that's, still a maybe one day if I can get my act together, but still writing and trying to do more.
Okay, you have a lot in common with Karen, actually. And one thing I wanted to point out is your experience in writing for Second Avenue. Now, Second Avenue in particular is a platform for people over a certain age.
Right. Next Avenue.
Next Avenue. Sorry.
Right. And yeah, it's really for folks who are 50 and older. Ironically, went to a conference for Northwestern for alums and met a former editor there. He became my editor, and we were the only two people at that time who looked like we were 50. So we struck up a conversation, and then he started, being open to my pitches. and worked with him for several years. He just became what he calls unretired. So he's still writing for Next Avenue, but he's not the work and purpose editor anymore. He also writes for Market Watch. And so he has introduced me to the new editors there. So the last few months I've been working with newer people, but after working with him for several years, 5 or 6 years. So.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Leslie. And now we have the lovely, talented, I don't even know how to say, it's not bi-coastal, but bi-continental traveler, Ms. Karen Thomas. So tell us a little bit about you. I know you've been both of you have been on the podcast before.
Well, Janine, my Simmons University sister, thank you so much for inviting me. I always enjoy talking and laughing with you. Janine and I spent, at different times, we were both alumni of Simmons, then college, now university. And then we also worked at Essence Magazine together on different sides of the floor. But it's interesting that we have had women-centered experiences for a really formative part of our lives. I mean, my first career was 20 years at Essence in marketing. And then at Simmons for 4 years, I decided, Simmons was really, I think, a very interesting place to go to school in Boston. I never went there because I wanted to go to an all-women's college, and I'm not in a sorority because I had enough of women being a part of a women's college. But both Simmons and Essence, I think, did something for the woman in me. I'm going to just say that. And so after my second career in education, founding a group of charter schools in my hometown, Newark, New Jersey, I decided to really retire and continue to be unapologetic about only doing the things in life I am interested in doing. So I sold my house, gave everything in New Jersey, gave everything in it away, and moved to Paris. And went to art school to study art. Now, I already have 4 degrees in stuff I was interested in working in. Now I wanted a degree in something I did not want to work in, but just wanted to enjoy. So classes held in museum, in the Louvre, in Florence, in Italy, used Paris as a jumping off point to just travel Europe, Africa. Now, I had been places before, a business traveler with Essence, actually, who had 4 different offices around the country. And with 2 children, Essence was an environment where I didn't have to choose between being a mother and being executive. So my woman thing is really defined differently throughout my life. And I appreciate having had, those institutions that said, yes, you can. So I think this conversation about now women being portrayed differently and, being able to be 60 and saucy was where I was
like that.
headed. So I have enjoyed watching these movies, not just as part of this assignment, but I have gravitated toward that because they're movies I can identify with. Some of these other things that are on Netflix and what have you, The Crown, which I've watched, but identify differently, with Leo Grande, because I like that movie. Oh, my boy,
We will discuss.
So thank you, Janine.
You're welcome. And I should also point out that Karen and I and another colleague of Karen's had attempted to launch another podcast sort of centered on this same idea of older women sharing stories and advice. And it was called Sages in Stages. And I've posted a little bit about it on the Words on Flicks Facebook page about Sages and Stages. So we've already talked somewhat about the challenges of being women of a certain age and dealing with health and, children adult children, parenting and all of that. So just to get started, I think what made me think about this topic was when I saw the film Good Luck to You, Leo Grand. It stars Emma Thompson, who I believe is 62 or 63, as a widow who and a retired teacher who hires a young sex worker to help her experience sexual pleasure. And the relationship kind of turns uncomfortably personal for each of them. But, how can you be that close and have sex with someone continuously, not continuously, that means all the time, every day, all day, but on a regular basis, let's say,
Right.
and not really get to know them and to get to know that other person. And I just think that Emma Thompson character is, at least I identified with her because I was brought up in the same generation where, yes, women can express their sexuality, but our parents were also raised in an earlier generation where women were more demure and didn't really express their sexual hunger or their lusts, or didn't make the first move, or weren't particularly vocal about their sexual needs. And then as we were teenagers, there was this huge sexual revolution where our bodies ourselves, and we claim our own sexuality, and we can be loud and state our needs. So I thought that film was really interesting. And there's also not only the sexual dynamic, the age dynamic, because the sex worker that she hires is significantly younger. And also there's the unspoken thing about race in that. So I know you saw it, Karen, and I know you wanted to talk about it. How did you feel about that film? Or it's a series, actually.
It's a series. There's another one coming. When?
No, there are several episodes of.
Oh,
You didn't see all the episodes?
I think I binge watched them or whatever. I feel like I
Oh,
never
you thought
stopped
it was like one
watching it.
continuous thing, right?
And I watched it with some, friends, the girlfriends. We had a girlfriends wine night watching it, which led to a whole nother conversation. But in my personal space, I had been dating someone in Paris for the last 4 years, and decided when I left Paris in June that would be over, because now I want to be in love, right? I only wanted to be in lust for those 4 years. No shame, but I'm not sending this link to my kids. But so not a lot of shame, I guess I should say that. But he was 50. I was 60 plus, right? So he was, a grown behind man, and fine. Oh my God, this man was fine. And I didn't come to Paris looking for romance, but I got one. Yeah, the book I'll never write. But I decided, because Janine and probably Leslie, I've been married, and sort of like Emma Thompson was thinking about, love and marriage were synonymous with sex, right? Or you almost had to have those two before you have permission to have sex. So I gave myself permission these 4 years to not have to be in love, to not even want to be married, right? And to be able to have wonderful sex and enjoy someone that I didn't have to be attached to. And I think the more English he learned, the less I enjoyed the relationship, because I'm not dating you to talk to you, so shut up and take your clothes off. But
I love it.
So watching her was kind of, I was like, yeah, I kind of been there, but there's a whole nother level that you can evolve to. And it's okay, especially at this stage. My husband is deceased and I've been free and I've raised my children with dating a little bit, but not with another man in the house with my children, which was a sacrifice for me. And so Leo Grande, I thought was a great movie. And one of the things that actually came out in our conversation after, and I'm gonna shut up after this,
That's okay.
was that my roommate from Simmons said, you know what? The next morning I got up and looked at myself naked in a mirror. And I thought about how we never see women over 60 on the screen naked, like she was naked, right? But it's okay for us. We're going to look different now than we did when we were at Simmons or at Essence, and I'm looking at the three of us with this beautiful, graying hair.
Yes.
And we've all decided that this is good stuff for us to not have to be whatevering, right? So I think it was also freeing and different in that the whole mirror thing, there was a scene where he was in the mirror with her, telling her how beautiful she was, whether it was real or not. It took her to the point where she could look at herself.
And she kept trying to cover up. She kept trying to take her hands and cover, and he took her hands and put them down. Yeah.
So, every woman over 50 or 60 should see that movie.
Absolutely. Thank you for being so honest about your reaction and your real life experiences. Leslie, did you happen to see this?
I haven't, but I've heard about it, and now after listening, I got to see this movie. Is it streaming? Is it on Netflix or?
I can't remember if it's on.
I'll have to look it up.
I think it's Hulu.
I think it is.
See, I don't have Hulu.
We gonna figure out a way for you to see this. So since you didn't happen to see it, I'll talk a little bit more about it because okay, so I was basically talking about my own experience in being raised by a woman whose own upbringing was very conservative. And, for my mother, the idea that her daughters would be sexually active even before marriage or outside of marriage or after marriage was like, clutch the pearls, Now, I do have to say that when I was younger, I did own my sexuality and, I had boyfriends and, I was married at one point. We didn't have any children. But, I've had some great loves in my life and I considered myself to be not a prude necessarily. But it's funny because now that I'm older, let me just say this. I haven't had a relationship in over a decade. I haven't dated anyone. It's been dry as a desert, but that is partially on me because I haven't sought it out. I haven't put it as a priority for me, and I haven't sought that out. So in watching this film with Emma Thompson as a woman my age coming out of a marriage, and she made the bold move to say, I want to see what it's like to experience pleasure, because even though I was married to this man who just passed away, our sexual life together was very staid. It was very unimaginative. It was without variation. And so to actually hire someone is a bold move. But then when he gets in the room, you see her going through all of this cycle of regret, shame, embarrassment. Then she's honest about what she wants, but then she's cowering like, oh my God, I'm a sex pervert. Like, you should just leave. This was all a mistake. Like, I don't know. I totally identified with that. And I'm not sure I would have acted any differently in that situation once that young man got in the room. And let me tell you, Leslie, this young man that she hires is a biracial 20 something dreamboat with an Irish accent. And
Okay.
even
I've seen the still photos. So I did see that. And I was like,
Fine.
yes, he's a beautiful, and even Emma Thompson looks at him, she's like, oh my God, you're just too gorgeous. Like, I so cannot with you, like, and this young man, I have to say, is like the perfect therapist. He's perfectly gentlemanly. He talks her through all of her fears and worries. He he's actually like, okay, let's have a drink. And now let's go to bed, shall we? Let's just move along here and get this started.
He's
wanted
just
me.
what the doctor ordered.
You wanted me. I'm here. Nobody's exploiting me. I'm not here to hurt you. I want you to experience pleasure, and I'm here to make that happen. Ting. And you see, and so the episodes, you see all of the stages of their relationship. But I think one of the things that's important about this film is the fact that Emma Thompson's character does really come to own her sexuality, to understand that she is beautiful in the body that she has, that she deserves to have this experience, and there's no shame in it. And I think that's an important message for women of all ages, but certainly for us at this age, because we may feel, like we're no longer desirable. And Karen, you just, you broke that stereotype, and Leslie, I don't want to get into your personal business, but I know that you've been married for many, many years. And
I have, but even when you've been married for a long time, it's interesting how I ran into a person that I knew from years ago, even before I met my husband. And it's interesting how people, their outlook can be different. We've had totally different lives, and ran into him and did a little editing for him. And you know how you have a Facebook or whatever friend, but there was an event we saw each other about 5 years ago. And since that time, we'll communicate more via Facebook. But he said, "You're just as beautiful as when I met you 30 plus years ago." Now, okay, maybe he was flirting a bit, but I'm married, but doesn't mean that part of me turned off, And then, ladies, I have to say, this was like a wonderful day. He said, "Those young girls don't have anything on you." Well, I was smiling for the rest of the afternoon, baby.
Ooh.
I mean, even though this is a gentleman who's 64 and I will be 62 in about 6 weeks, I know that he dates young women. I tease him about it all the time. So for him to say that, it makes a little bit difference because I know he's still kind of a little bit of a player. So I was like, all right, then I'll take that. Thank you very much.
I love
your
it.
mate sees you all the time and they love you and care for you. But it's, you at a certain point, you have to work to do different things because you become kind of like roommates. You know each other's aches and pains, and whether it's getting a new dress or going someplace. I find when my husband and I travel, it's sort of like, oh, we're not home. It's like, it's like he'll reach out and hold my hand. It's like a little bit like, oh, are we on a date, a travel date? What's happening? So I understand the sameness of, I'm predictable, you're predictable because we've been together a long time. And just that, peer who happens to be a male making those comments made me feel like, well, all right then. Thank you very much. I felt a little bit like, okay, I don't have to I'm flaunting this silver hair, but I don't have to feel like I'm, done.
Right.
Yeah.
Married, but not dead.
There you go.
You know, Janine, it's interesting because when I think about this genre of movies and the women who are like queen of that now, like Diane Keaton, and I'm gonna call her Murphy Brown, but I know that Candice Bergen,
Candice
Candice
Bergen.
Bergen, yeah.
you know, and now a little bit Loretta Devine, right?
Mhm.
And Alfred Woodard, who are moving in. It always starts from these women having been married and now they're either widowed or divorced, or husband left them for a younger woman, or just to go ride a motorcycle around the world.
Right.
But usually what they all have, what the characters all have in common, is that they've been married at some point. And you know, some of these movies with Meryl Streep have been about, you know, kind of how she now is relating to her ex-husband.
Oh, it's complicated. I love that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is complicated. That was complicated,
Yeah.
you know, or they have children that they have now decided, I don't have to be just a mother. So like in Juanita, where she was like, y'all take care of your babies now. I'm going out here. And, you know, she finds, really has a whole different kind of experience. Or even in Tyler Perry's The Family That Prays. Right. So you have Alfred Woodard, who goes out on the road with Kathy Bates, and, you know, they become almost like Thelma and Louise. They're not killing people, but they're having a in the moment experience, whether it's dancing in a cowboy saloon, you know, or just drinking some wine and having whatever experience after that. So
exactly, you know, it's like, but is this a hit against men, that once we come out of those long-term relationships, or these relationships that tie us down or tie us to one place, are we then untethered to the world? Because there are so many stories like that of, you know, women taking solo trips, or like in Juanita, Alfre Woodard leaves. She has these fantasies about Blair Underwood, which is hilarious. She's like, and actually Blair Underwood is in the movie and shows up sitting next to her. She's like, oh, not now, Blair Underwood. Oh, kiss me like that, Blair Underwood. It's hilarious. But is it a trope? Is it a cliche that we only find ourselves truly at this age? You know?
No, I don't know. I don't think necessarily there's a certain, I'm thinking of a non-comedy rom-com, but just the way that in the first Black Panther, that Angela Bassett, I think of her waiting to exhale when they're like in their 40s. And now she's this silver dread-haired, you know, mother, queen mother. And she's so regal. And you know, when things change and she and the daughter have to escape, you know, she doesn't just crumble, you know, she's like, okay, we're gonna have to do something different. And I like the strength of that. I don't know that it's a trope. I mean, yes, if you think of Palms and Book Club and those together, they're kind of very similar.
Yeah.
Palms. It's like the sisterhood coming back. With Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, it's a little bit more layered. And, you know, I think in terms of, it's really women being able to say, this is what I want, and this is what I don't want. And maybe this is what I can consider. I think it hits those three notes. And it's women.
We know ourselves better.
Right. We know ourselves better. And sometimes, you know, for example, in the Emma Thompson film that you're talking about, the
Leo Grand,
you know, she's like, should I do this? Should I not? Oh gosh, maybe you should leave, you know, that whole thing. And I get that, even though I've yet to see the film, I really get what you're saying, because it's like saying, I desire a certain thing. Can I now at this stage not only be desirable, but is it okay for me to say what I desire out loud?
Right.
And that can even happen in ongoing relationships, you know, because you're over, you know, things seem like they're stagnant, but we're all changing a little bit all the time. And so I think that's a big, I don't know if it's a trope, but
Mhm.
maybe it's writers saying, as opposed to the conservative time,
Yes.
my mother was of the same generation of your mother,
Our
Janine, but
mothers were close friends.
yeah, but she was divorced where your mother stayed married. And
That's right.
so I think I got to see my mother date some, and I got to, when I got old enough where she felt it was comfortable, to have some funny talks about, men and their sexual, a few sexual partners, and some that were good and some that weren't. Um, and it was interesting being able at that stage in my life, in my late 20s and early 30s, to have a few talks with my own mother and see her in that light and get to hear her say, I like dating, but I think I can't be married to anybody anymore because I can't
Mm.
fit in that box anymore. But that didn't mean that she was a prude or that she didn't want to go out.
I
And,
think your mother was a little more progressive than my mother, though.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, your mom was a little more with it than my mom.
But I mean, I can reflect. She's no longer, as with us, but I can reflect on some of the things that she said that now that I'm on the eve of turning 62 make more sense. Not
Hmm.
that I didn't get, but now I get them more,
Yeah.
because I have the life experience. Like I remember she was saying sometimes she and her girlfriends were talking and saying they were her peers and saying sometimes they were with gentlemen friends and the gentlemen were having a hard time getting aroused and they had to say, it's okay. Let's just enjoy the time because you stressing and straining so much that, it ain't worth. We can hug, we can have a good time, we go out dancing. If you don't get it up at the end of the night, all right. Maybe you will,
Hmm.
maybe you won't, but don't just keep trying,
Yeah, because you
So
wearing me out.
yeah, right. You wearing me out. Let's just
And it's
enjoy each
not,
other's company.
intimacy encompasses so much more than just, the old, the old in and out. So
Yes. Yes.
yes.
I think my parents were Ozzie and Harriet to the bone, right?
Hmm.
But and the biggest fight I ever had with my mother was going back to work when my son was 6 months old. I couldn't wait
Wow.
to get out of the house. I was going crazy. I was meant to work, right?
Yeah.
And she was a stay-at-home mom, very progressive because she put us into, I could twirl the baton, I could do a cartwheel, I could play the piano. We did all of those things, like a different activity every day after school. But that was who she was. And my father, like, she was home watching reading ladies home journals. She found a house she liked and my father was like, okay, I'll build it for you. So that was them. Like, no one has ever built me a house. Right, even though I was kind of looking for that. But my grandmother was, I'm not going to say married 5 times, but I do remember 5 men. Okay, different men at stages in my life. And my mother-in-law was married 5 different times. And 4 or 5 years ago, came from Detroit, where she lives, to visit us for Christmas, me and the kids and the grandkids. And she gets off the plane. I'm picking her up, and she's like, you know what? This man asked me for my telephone number. I'm not getting married no more. I'm like, well, there's nobody else left, so I hope not. But, maybe a little dinner, but I'm not getting married no more. I'm like, well, you've been married 5 times. They all dead. You still here. You can enjoy yourself without being married. And she's 91 and looks fabulous. Like Diane Carroll, fabulous.
Oh, I like
Yeah, like
that.
you cannot look at her and go 91. I could be with her and you would go, oh, your sister, your older sister, maybe. But I think also in these movies, so why didn't Diane Carroll ever get to be that Diane Keaton woman?
I guess the roles just they didn't consider it. Like even for book club, I always thought it would be so much more interesting if they had at least one Black woman who was part of that club. I mean, it could have been, well, Diane is no longer with us, but it certainly could have been not Viola necessarily, but well, Viola or
Or Alfred or Lorena
Alfred.
Octavia
Devine.
Spencer.
Yes, that's who I was thinking of. Octavia Spencer,
Yeah.
or even Cheryl Lee Ralph, who's younger, but I think
But
Cheryl
she
Lee
just
Ralph
turned
is actually
65, I think.
is my age. Yeah. So and good for her winning that Emmy.
Yeah, yeah, and her
So
speech, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yes,
But
fantastic.
it's if black don't crack, why aren't these beautiful actresses now the role models? I mean, are we really? So I love Tyler Perry and how he votes with his checkbook, the things he does with his money, but Medea, not so much.
Yeah.
Like I don't really identify with that, but I understand it has built his brand and allowed him to do some amazing other kinds of things that have changed the world. But the Medea character for me, now I knew some of them. I did know some of them growing up in church and what have you, and on the block in the community I grew up in. But I don't think that that's really a character I would say that I really identify with. Now, there may be some people calling me that now. But oh boy.
That's funny. Well, as we've been talking, and I think Medea is one of those stereotypes, even though it's a stereotype from our culture that resonates with so many people. But while we've been talking, I've been desperately looking for that document that I thought I had sent a link to you, and I thought that I had copied it so that I could refer to it. But it is that 2019 report that I think the Gina Davis Institute on Gender, she established this institute, and we saw her honored on the Emmy Awards that were shown, I think it was last Monday.
it was last week.
Yeah, she and her partner in the institute received an award for the work that they're doing, because every year they finance or get financing to look at diversity on film screens and TV screens. And there was a study that they did in 2019 that looked at how women are portrayed on screen, older women, usually as any woman over 50 is inappropriate. She is the butt of jokes. She's either oversexed and dressed inappropriately, or she is dang near senile. She's always the butt of jokes. She's never the main protagonist. And that she has no love life. She may give advice. She may be the person that everyone comes to for advice, but she is not a main character. And for the life of me, I can't think of what this thing was called. And I know I saved it, but it had some very interesting information in it. But of course, now that we're on the call, I can't find it. But it was an important document because it made us look at how women of a certain age are portrayed on screen. So the idea that Good Luck to You, Leo Grande would have Emma Thompson as the main protagonist. And in fact, that type of a screenplay is called a two-hander or a two-fer, because there's really mostly only two characters in it for the entire run. There's another couple of people that show up, but it's mainly them for the entire series. So we have this idea of older women as being, needing to be cared for, as not being with it. And some of that has been countered with a lot of recent movies. Like, I think, Karen, you were telling me you saw Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, and you enjoyed that. And that is about a widow, a European widow, an English widow who decides she
was British. And
she wants a designer dress. Okay, go ahead.
She saved all this money and she finally says, well, I can't take it with me. And I want to do something different. So, instead of doing what I did, which was go to Paris and tell everybody in my family, whatever you wanted in this house, I don't have to die for you to get it. Right. But you better get it now because I'm getting ready to spend up all the rest of it. And she wants to feel to feel beautiful, as opposed to just having people. She's cleaning these people's houses.
So she's
in
working
London.
class. She's a working class woman. She's not upper crust. She's not hoity-toity. She's
and one of the women that has been cleaning her house owes her all this money, because apparently they're having financial problems, but the woman won't say, I'm broke. And she goes into her closet, and this woman has this beautiful dress that she's bought for some occasion she's going out to. And Mrs. Harris, goes, well, this is a beautiful dress, but you could have paid me with what this dress costs. And she kind of becomes consumed about having, I forget which, maybe Dior, this Dior gown. And she she spends her money, gets a ticket, goes to the house of Dior. She shows up, and they're like, so the cleaning people come at 7:00, not now with the rest of our guests. And one of their patrons, who's a handsome, single man, says, well, she's my guest, and brings her in and sits her in a seat in front of these women who are like, well, why is she here? And these women who are like, why is she here, decide that they're going to buy this dress that she really wanted. And it's a story. It becomes not so much the story of a dress, but the story about how she decides that now she can be first in her own life, as opposed to having to take care of everybody else. So
it's what the dress represents. It's what the dress represents.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Janine, I just pulled up. So I think it's called Frail, Frumpy, and Forgotten.
That's it. Frail, Frumpy, and Forgotten. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, why I couldn't put my hand on it, but even that title tells you right there how women of a certain age have been portrayed on screen, over the last several decades. And they looked at TV shows as well as
that
film.
Reminds me of something.
Yes, go ahead.
So in Empire, which has, I guess, been off the air a couple of years now, but at a certain point, Leslie Uggams was the crazy and hurtful mother of Lucius, and Felicia Rashad was someone that he was sparring with business-wise. So she was kind of evil. They were both kind of evil in a different way, but Leslie Uggams was also crazy.
Witchy is another
yes,
trope.
That would be, yeah. And they
witchy
both
and bitchy.
Right. And I thought it was great to have these women working. But I was saying, wow, so what's our person who did Empire? He also did The Butler.
The director, yes.
It's what's his name again?
I can see his face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come to me. But he kind of, in a way, they were both a little bit stereotypical, but maybe stereotypical with sauce. And I think the two actresses brought a lot to those roles, which was interesting. But they were still kind of in that witchy, bitchy kind of mode. And they were clearly women over 50. Now, toward the end, Leslie Uggams' character goes from needing to be cared for to she kind of gets her mojo back a bit. She's not quite so, yeah.
Lee Daniels,
right. And it's just sort of interesting. I think, over the years, I have seen several times that movie, It's Complicated, with Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin. And the reason I think I will like that movie so much is that, yes, she had the thing is, oh, I feel this sexual chemistry with my ex. But then she also started this new relationship with another peer, a male, which was Steve, God, what's his name?
Oh,
white hair. Steve Martin. And it was interesting. That was kind of fragile. And then he realized that she had a thing with her ex. And then toward the end, they kind of come together because she tells her ex, been there, done that. We can't move on. But I liked how she went through those different, because he left her for a younger woman. And then for him to come kind of back, it was her own validation. Like, I still got it. And then kind of allowed her to maybe try something with Steve Martin. And then the ex was very jealous. Alec Baldwin does the jealous thing well. But I just liked how sort of the seesaw of her coming to her. In the end, she sort of, I feel, comes full circle and comes into her own, and even with her own children, because they realize you did it with dad, and they realize what all was been going on behind the scenes, and they're like, ah. And she says, no, we're not getting back together. It was a temporary thing, and but I really liked how they allowed her character at her age to have that arc.
Yes, and to have the full range of adult emotions, and to be a figure of desire, to have romance, and to, parents have real lives. I'm not a mother, but I think sometimes children think, oh, mom and dad, they're staid. They don't have these emotions. They don't have these lives or these concerns, and you never stop, being able to express the full pantheon of human emotion in your life, and particularly in our culture now, where we're part of the baby boom generation. I think all of us, and we have reached this age of retirement. There are so many of us, and now the culture is pushing the idea that 60 is the new 40, or 50 is the new 30, and so we're not as old as the previous generation of 60-year-olds were. When you see pictures of like 100 years ago, people our age, those people are ancient. You know what I mean? Like, we have better food, even though it's full of chemicals. We have better medical care. We're more conscious of the things that we need to do to be healthy. We have clothing that is more flattering. We have makeup and all these things that keep us more youthful and more active. And so why doesn't that extend to our relationships, our desires, our abilities, our willingness to go abroad and experience new things, and to know ourselves better at this age?
And we have something else you didn't mention, which is money, right?
Well,
so
some of us.
Well, but I think at this stage of life, many of us, so in my mother's generation, everyone was, had money if your husband died, right? But not necessarily your own money, because we're kind of the first generation to have gone, at least for Black women, to have gone to as many colleges as we had, to have access to having our own credit reports, to making those kinds of decisions about, so I remember my mother saying, you should always have a little stash that he don't know about, right? Well, she didn't know there was a whole 401k there was a whole plan that not so much he didn't know about, but I felt like I was in control of that, so I could vote with my own checkbook, whatever.
Right. There you go.
But a lot of these movies are comedies, right? But there was a movie that Meryl Streep did with Clint Eastwood called Bridges of Madison County.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a really beautiful movie about this woman who had, who was really not just, but she was a wife that totally defined her, and then someone who made beautiful pictures came into her life when her family was away. And she was able to, for the first time, experience, but the guilt in the end, really didn't allow her to fully enjoy that relationship. And the other day, actually, I was at the Senior Center down here in North Carolina watching Nights in Rodanthe, which is one of my favorite
Nights in Rodanthe
movies. And Janine, incidentally, it is actually the producer is Denise Denobi, who is also a Simmons.
Oh, yes.
She was in my class at Simmons.
Oh, okay.
So I enjoy that movie for so many reasons. What is the woman who is actually the star of the movie? And I love Richard Gere from the front and the back.
Diane.
Lane,
Lane.
Diane Lane, and that movie was, although it was about my husband left me for a younger woman and now he wants to come back, she found a relationship at the end, and those love letters were they were just so, the love letters. Imagine that. That's what I want now. What love
Oh,
letters?
I haven't had a love letter in years.
Since I was 8, probably, but
I was a little older, but anyway. But yeah, and then there was a movie that I saw. I want to say it came out last year. No, 2019, called Gloria Bell. And Julianne Moore is a middle-aged, long divorced woman. She's got 2 adult children. And I so identified with her because she loved music and she loved to dance, and she's driving every day to work, listening to this dance music. And, she's still vibrant. She still wants to do things. And then she meets this man who seems to be perfect for her. It's John Turturro, who I don't necessarily think of as being handsome, but he, now that he's older, he's a silver fox actually in this film. And but she is ultimately disappointed by him because he's a wimp who's still tied to his former wife and daughters. Like, he is not willing in his, even though he's divorced, and he should be freeing himself to have this relationship with her. He isn't free. And so that's a stunning revelation for her. And I think the film speaks to what a lot of older women are dealing with on the dating scene. I mean, it's lovely to see these movies about women our age and older who are able to meet men and have these successful romances, and however they want them to be, whether it's just, friends with benefits or something more. And that's lovely. But to me, Gloria Bell represents more of the reality of, like, at the end of the movie, she goes to this party and the song Gloria, Gloria comes on, and that's like her theme song, and she's dancing. But you see,
I think I saw this movie.
Yes, that as she's dancing, it's the realization, like, she just spent all this time to be with this man. She invested so much of herself. And, now that's over and she has to start again. And I think that's what keeps a lot of women. We don't want the heartache anymore. We don't want, we want to put ourselves out there, but there's a lot of fear attached to that. And I think that's what you see also in the Emma Thompson character in Leo Grand, that fear of being hurt by the experience, being exposed, being damaged, being having something happen that we can't recover from emotionally.
Yeah, I was just thinking, and this goes back a while, but the film As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton, had he not gotten ill at her house, he was going out with her daughter.
Right.
Then the man has
doggy dog.
Right, he's real doggy dog, and he really can't be. And it's like at her house, or up there, and so it's like, well, all right. She has this big, nice house in the Hamptons, I think it was. But she's like, well, you can be all the way over there, and I guess I'll, and the fact that she's a writer, and I think he was a record producer or something.
Yes.
But had fate not thrown them together, which I thought was interesting. The way he, who has spent his whole life chasing women 25 years younger than him, or certainly in recent time, because like her daughter. And it's like a learning experience for both of them. He realizes that a woman who is of a certain age can actually be attractive. And then Keanu Reeves is the young doctor.
Well, that's the thing. I think if Keanu Reeves didn't show up with his fine ass,
I know.
wooing
Amen.
her
Amen.
and showing the Jack Nicholson character how desirable she really is.
It's like he
Would it
wakes
have,
up like, oh,
yeah, would
yeah.
it have turned out differently? But thank you for bringing up that movie.
Yeah, because I think that that's another movie that I have enjoyed and seen numerous times. And it never really gets old to me because she has to let go of some of the stuff that has kept her, okay, I'm a famous writer and I have my daughter and I have an ex, and but to even be open to Keanu Reeves. And then the thing with Jack Nicholson was just so, I know there's this scene when they realize there's something happening, and yet they were going to have breakfast together, that neither one of them could sleep, and I think the daughter comes or calls or something, and they both kind of are awakened to the fact that there is this attraction. And I think Diane Keaton realizes at a certain point, well, if Keanu Reeves didn't come pick me up and I got kind of fixed up, then Jack Nicholson gets kind of jealous.
Yeah.
And it's this interesting, it's her realizing this young man want to take me out. And the old one's not too bad either in a way. Let me think about, it's like she says, I got choices.
I got choices. There's nothing more powerful than a woman with choices.
Exactly.
So ladies, we have reached the hour. Noon, are you good to stay a little bit longer, or
I'm
gotta
okay.
go? You're good? Okay, we'll go like 10-15 minutes longer.
Okay.
And I wanted to mention, because we touched on her earlier, Diane Keaton, God love her. She, between her and Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, they have become like the leading edge of American actresses, along with Candice Bergen, of representing issues for older women. But I say Diane Keaton too, because she's been the producer as well as an actress in many of these films. She was in Palms, she was in Book Club, she was, I can't even name all the
First Wives Club.
First Wives Club, when she was a little younger. She still looks great, I have to say. And I do have to credit her with I don't know what's going on with her neck. Something's going on with her neck that she doesn't want the rest of us to see. Because if you notice, in all of her films, everybody else is in sleeveless. She always has a scarf or a turtleneck. It doesn't matter if she's at the beach, she's got a turtleneck. So she's covering up what's happening here. And
but she made funny. Jack Nicholson cut it off in the As Good as It Gets, where they're going to make love. And she's like, take it off. And she doesn't she wears a scoop neck when she's going on that first date with Keanu Reeves.
Oh, okay. I
remember that.
Look.
Yeah. It's not a turtleneck. And in fact, it makes it just that little design, whoever the stylist for the film, that made me say, oh, she's open. Because it's not low cut, but it's a scoop neck. It's not a turtleneck. And I was like, look at you.
All
it's
right,
low enough that she has on a neck.
Yes, definitely owned that genre in so many ways. But she hasn't, you don't see Black women in her films, though.
No. Not really.
Loretta Devine. She
was in Palms, but she didn't do, who was in it? Pam Grier.
Oh, right.
Pam Grier was in it. And they do nothing with her. Like, she barely has any lines. And I'm like, this is sad.
And she has aged so gracefully. And she is beautiful.
I love Pam. I love Pam. I interviewed her one time. This is going back like 15 years. I interviewed her on the phone, and we spent like 20 minutes talking about Vaseline and how she and I do this too, and I'll go to sleep at least once a month or every other week with a face full of Vaseline. Honey, you moisturize it and then you put the Vaseline on and you go to sleep, and it keeps the wrinkles from, but then again, if you have wrinkles, so what? You know what I mean? Like at this age, however we
Yeah.
look, however we are, this is it. This is what
Mhm.
we look like, and we come with wisdom and experience and a little bit of cougar vibe. Is it okay to be a cougar? Is that even a term we should use anymore?
Listen, go for what you want. That's my motto. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't go looking for it. And I had to say, wait a minute, did he just say, do you want to have dinner? Did he really just say that? And did I really hesitate to say yes? Well, that will be the last time I act like I didn't hear it or shouldn't be hearing it. And that I would even hesitate to say yes. I don't do online dating. I can't get with that. But, the old fashioned, I want to talk to you. I want to get to know you. I want to take you to a soccer game in Paris. And don't worry, nobody will bother you. It's all a little, makes a girl feel good, because I remember remember when we were waiting to exhale to become a movie. We all read the book, and it was freeing in a lot of ways for us as Black women who were professional and 40-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And now to look back on waiting to exhale, or how Stella got her groove back, and how revolutionary that was. It's like these movies are that kind of for us in some way now, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily with Black women, as those movies were, but and I'm waiting for the next best man, because what is Morris Chestnut going to be like at 65 or 70? Because he's got to be close, right? And what is
he looks the same. He never ages.
But all of them, so what the next best man, they got to be 50. They
should at least be 50, the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I guess that means that they be dating women who were 30. Of course, if it's going to be their group, then they would have to age along with them. Yeah.
But older men can always get cast. They always get cast with younger women as their leading ladies. And this is an ongoing issue in Hollywood. And I wish some of the actors would stand up and say, look, this is ridiculous for me to have a 35-year-old or a 25-year-old co-star when I'm 40, 45, 50. And this is still going on in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's just like funny. I was just saying not too long ago, for some reason, I don't know, maybe I was having insomnia, whatever, but I watched Stella Got Her Groove Back. I hadn't seen it in a while. And, I know that it mirrored something that happened in Terry McMillan's own life. And I noticed she did not end up with that man, the young man. I mean, they got married or divorced or whatever. They didn't stay together. And I think the movie ended with them, Angela Bassett and Taye Diggs are going to try to make a go of it, which was, sweet, but I was just like, it seemed a little bit like, I don't know.
Wishful thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it was real wishful thinking. But it's interesting. I come back to Angela Bassett because she went from that to, she still looks fantastic. And, she's the queen mother in Black Panther. Now they don't really give.
And we're going to see her even more in that queenly role and taking charge in Wakanda Forever. Looks like
right, but I guess no love interest. That's not. Well, I don't know, but it seems like there's not going to be time for her to take the reins of the power and love too. But I don't know, but we'll see.
I think to your point, Janine, if Kevin Costner can ask for Whitney Houston in a role that was not written for a Black woman. She sings a Dolly Parton song that was written for Elvis, and it flies up the charts. That it ought to say something to Hollywood and some of these actors about the power that they have at the box office and to make some of these changes.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Karen. And just to wind up on our last note, we need to close up our fabulous conversation, but I know you've seen The Woman King, and
Yes.
there's so many great things to say about The Woman King, um, which I just talked about in another podcast, and I did see it twice. And I know there's a lot of controversy about it, but let's be real. I think Viola Davis is 57,
Yes.
or maybe older.
At least 57.
She looks fantastic in this film. She is a woman warrior. She is a leader. She is the star and the main protagonist of this film. And
Yes.
it says a lot to us as women of a certain age, as women of color, African American women, and the power that she has, not only for age, gender, race, right? The power that she has at the box office. Sony Pictures did not think that this film would be the runaway hit that it's been. So it's made like 19 million at the box office in its first weekend. So
I'm so happy about that.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I have to admit, I didn't read much of the controversy before because I didn't want it to get in my head. But after seeing it last night, I just think, number one, and you mentioned this, Janine, it is a film. It is not a documentary. Our people, our Black brothers and sisters, and other people too, but sometimes get all just bent out of shape if every little thing isn't, where they think it should be historically, or it's not a documentary. Films are to entertain as well as to inform. And unless you only saw the trailer, the one note I heard, they said, well, they didn't say how the people from Dahomey were part of, working with the Europeans with the slave trade. They said it like 5 times throughout the movie. The main character said, my brother sold my mother.
Right.
So she's saying, I want us to change. She's not saying we didn't do this.
Right.
I want us to change and not keep selling our people to these Europeans. So anybody if that's their thing, I'm like, you didn't pay attention. I mean, I just found the film so powerful on so many levels.
Yes.
And obviously I just saw it last night, but from the sisterhood of the Agoji to the King Chief actually listening to Viola Davis and saying, maybe I really need to listen to what she's saying, from the Malik character who wanted to come back to the only place his mother wasn't a slave, to her daughter's, we find out later that she's the daughter. That's a revelation.
Spoiler
Sorry. But to her, just her seeing him for the first time and saying like that line, so you're of them, but you're not of them. And you're of us, but you're not of us. Because that's been our people too.
Yeah.
I've been doing some research on my Irish ancestors and looking into that and that whole, I just thought it was
the power of women, the power of women, so even in voting now, if we would just exercise our power, because women really do rule the world. We are the only ones that have babies. Come on now, we close our legs, it's over. Ain't no more people coming. So the power of women, whether it's, and now to move on to this genre of women, because we're living longer and we're interested in seeing movies about us, kind of like Essence Magazine. For the first time on the newsstand, there were these beautiful Black women that we could go to the newsstand and buy a magazine that spoke about and to us, right? And so I think these films are speaking about us, but just like Woman King, we have to be a stronger voice in it, and just stay in there with the storylines and with celebrating people like Pam Grier, who are still able to play. I mean, she could have been one of these characters. She could have replaced Diane Keaton in one of these movies. and it would have been a powerful movie. So come on, Tyler, get with it now. Move on from the D and get with the program.
There you go. Well,
And
I
in the
think we,
credits, Viola Davis was a co-producer, and
yes,
the director, Prince
Gina
Blythewood,
Prince
is
Bythewood.
Blythewood.
is a Black woman. So I was just like, yes.
Hmm. So thank you. We'll have to end it there, but I really
you,
enjoyed
Janine.
our conversation. This was fantastic. I love getting you two together because
Yes,
now
nice meeting you,
Nice
Leslie.
meeting you too, Karen.
So for this episode of the Words on Flick show, we're going to say goodbye and thank you and see you next time. Thanks, ladies. So
Bye-bye.
appreciated. Okay.
All right.
Turn it off. All right, I don't know how to turn it off. Stop recording. There we go.